Welcome to Clubhouse with a review of the Bandai high-grade Universal Century 1144 Gundam Mk-III, an unfortunate mobile suit without any animation series to call home, and until it resurfaced in the recent years as the RE100 kit, and then more recently in Build Diver's re-rise as the Gundam Tertium, the Gundam Mk-III was really an MS you ever saw in the fringes of Gundam media, like occasionally in trading cards or an occasional gashapon toy. But today we have it in the HGUC line as well, so many fans are happy, even if it's from P Bandai. Why Bandai? Getting right down to business, the Gundam Mk-III was sent out in Japan in April 2021 and is sold for a price of 2,430 yen. It has a standard P Bandai monochrome box without any illustration made for it. The box measures 30 by 19 by 9.5 centimeters, so it's a little bit on the thick side. Inside the box, we have the Mk-III spread across a surprising 13 runners, with 2 of them being beam saber effect parts and then 1 of them being for the polycaps. Then we get a single sheet of foil stickers with 1 here for the eyes, and then the black ones here go onto the vents on the side of the head. And then the short green one goes onto the front camera, and this longer one is for the back of the head. The green ones here go onto the sensors on the 2 sides of the chest. Then we have these orange details that go onto the front and the back of each of the shoulders. The other orange triangles here are for each side of the wing binders. This green one here is for the aiming sensor of the Mk-III's proper rifle. And this one is for the other beam rifle. And then this long one also goes onto this gun at the front here. These last red triangles go onto the sides of the shield. The instructions are all in black and white, and it has nothing other than the assembly instructions on the front and the back. After about 90 minutes of assembly, we have the Gundam Mk-III here looking really tall and really lanky. The mix of grayish blue and the red highlights is quite unique to this mobile suit, and when combined with a distinctive silhouette, you're gonna recognize the Mk-III immediately. Other unique characteristics include this really long face, which you don't see on any other mobile suits, and some fans find it quite a bit odd and ugly. And if you look at the MS, you'll find hints of Anaheim's later MSs, like the L-shaped shoulders that their MSs quite often use, and the shape of the legs that have a rough outline of what will later be the Hakushiki. And on this kit, we get some nice color details, like the vents behind the grating here on the chest that's actually done in gray plastic. And the thrusters on the legs are all done in gray as well. The inside of the back skirt is also lined with a nice big gray part here. The vents on the side of the heads aren't colored, but they are part separated, so it's really easy to paint these if you take the head apart. The Mk-III doesn't have very complex colors, so this kit manages to capture the colors accurately without too much trouble. Now the wing binders on the back have quite a bit of articulation, and they're actually very expressive. The entire binder moves on a ball joint. So combined with the length of the wings, they can point in and out quite a lot. The wings themselves can also move, with the bottom one here moving this much, and then the smaller wing on top moving this much. This all helps give the Mk-III a sense of speed and movement nicely when you pose it, and you really appreciate it when they work, but with all the moving bits they can be a little fussy and finicky, and they're gonna need you to adjust them quite a lot. And that's a good chance to talk about these 2 cannons on the back right here. So they're connected between the wing and the backpack, so it can get a little awkward when you try to move the cannons, but you end up moving the wings as well, and you have to fix that up. I mean, it's not a deal breaker or anything, but it can be a little troublesome when you try to pose it. But the 2 cannons do look good, and they do add a lot to the surprisingly plain MS. Now when I say plain, I do mean plain, because besides the wings and the cannons that we saw just now, the Mk-III is very much as normal of a mobile suit as they come. Now not that I'm complaining, because people who buy the Mk-III probably do it for the character more than any big gimmick that it has, and the Mk-III does really look like nothing else out there. But when it comes down to it, it really is a basic humanoid mobile suit. But plain as it is, the designers seem to have gotten a little bit obsessive when they designed this kit though, like the skirt armor, which is an entirely new piece. It replaces this old one here, which looks nearly the same except for the top that's not as steep, and the larger area of that little sunken in part, which to be honest, I'm not so sure if it's a significant change at all, but I guess I appreciate the extra work they put in, even if it's unclear why they felt it was needed. And for the hands, we get a simple 2 pairs, with one of them being the common closed hands, and then this other pair of open hands. The closed hands are original sculpts and they don't reuse any older hand parts. The hole in the middle is squared as these things usually are. The open hands are made for holding things too, and you can see this little slit on the inner side here that'll mount something in nice and firm. And that's something that they hold are these cannons that we just saw earlier, which you can actually pull off, and they function as large beam sabers, which may be the roots of the double Zetas' hyper beam sabers. The kit gives you 2 sets of beam effect parts, and you use the bigger ones that you usually get with MG kits, and they fit nicely on the handle. Then you can slot the handle into the open hands' slit, and the sword's ready for play and display. The contrast of the big sword is strong against the skinny Mk-III, and it makes for some really interesting displays. Then we might as well have a look at the 2 smaller beam sabers, and yes, for some reason the Mk-III has 2 pairs of swords. And these ones are curiously mounted on the outside of the shield, which doesn't seem very sensible to me. Now the Anaheim engineers seem to know this as well, because they put the spare energy packs on the inside, and there's still a lot of space, so I don't know what's going on with them right here. Anyway, you can pull off any of the 2 handles that are mounted with a slit, and the handles are quite a bit slimmer, and they take the standard HG beam effect parts. Then you can just slot it into any of the closed fits, and they fit just well enough inside the square hole. Moving along with some more weapons, we get the Mk-III's custom beam rifle, which the Gundam Mk-III also already had. As a bit of an aside, this gun is technically not the Mk-III's gun, and it's actually the one seen with the prototype Zeta Gundam in the original drawings. The Mk-III really didn't have a gun of its own, so the more you know. The gun is 2 pieces sandwiched together, as these things are, and the mouth of the barrel is actually really small, so you can't fit a beam effect into it. The energy pack can be removed, which is really nice, and you actually get a total of 4 of these, so even with the 2 of them stored inside the shield and then 1 more inside the gun, you still have 1 more left that's a spare. One more thing you can do is mount the gun onto the back skirt like this, and it works quick and simple, as long as the thrusters don't melt and cook it. And then we have this other boxy beam rifle that we've also seen on the Gundam Tertium. You might also recognize this gun if you had the old Gundam Fix Figuration figure. The gun is 2 pieces sandwiched together, as these things are, and the inner side of the scope sadly has a bit of hollow space that you can see from here. It can also be mounted easily onto the back just like the other beam rifle, so you can have the Mk-III deployed with both guns if you like. Last up for the weapons, we have this really lanky shield which matches the proportion of the MS quite well. The colors are beautifully part separated, and we've already talked about the weird beam saber handles on the front here, as well as the energy packs on the back. The backside has a good amount of details, and there aren't any ugly empty spaces. The shield is mounted with this piece here, which clips onto the side of the forearm, and it grips on firmly, and when you mount the shield, it's not going to wobble around, which is wonderful. But the shield does have a problem here that's very rare for Bandai kits. So if we zoom in nice and close, we can actually see these lines that run along the surface of the shield. Now this is the flaw of the mold itself, so you're probably going to see this streaked surface on all the kits. So you're going to have to sand it down to get it nice and smooth. I mean, like I said, this is something exceedingly rare on Bandai kits, and it's a little surprising to see it here in such a visible surface. So all in all, I think one of the nicest things about the Mk-III are all the weapons you get with it, and the options that you get. So you can have some of them equipped, or you can have all of them installed, and they give the impression of a very flexible compact unit, even though it's actually 2 overlapping sets of beam rifles and beam sabers, but don't think too hard about these things. On to the articulation. Starting from the top, the head looks up just a little bit, limited by the rims on the bottom of the head. It looks downward quite a bit more, even with the long chin. The head can rotate a full circle with just enough clearance for that bottom rim. The shoulders swing out a little bit. You can adjust the shoulders on the ball joints. And the arms can swing outwards this much with the help of the shoulder armor. The entire arm can swing a full circle if you help it a little bit and avoid the wings on the back. The biceps are fixed, but the elbow joint itself can't allow rotation of a full circle. The same elbow gives us a slightly underwhelming 90-degree bend. The hands can rotate a full circle, and if you pull them out a little bit, you can adjust them on their ball joint. The waist only turns a little bit to each side because the bottom of the waist actually hits the crotch section of the armor. The front skirt can lift up this much, and the side skirts go up a little bit because the red part's on top, and the back skirt is fixed and it does not move. The legs swing outwards much less than you'd expect even before it hits the side skirts because of the strange way that joint is built. The entire leg can swivel a little bit along the thigh. You get a forward kick of only to maybe about 60 degrees because of that same strange leg joint. And then they kick back a little bit until they hit the back skirt. And the knee bend fares a little bit better and it folds until the leg armor hits each other. With the help of the flap here, the double jointed feet can swing upwards all the way to here, and it goes backwards to here. And it moves side to side only a little bit. So I'm sure you've noticed along the way how the articulation falls a bit short in many places, like the elbows and especially that leg joint. It'll take some creative angling to hide all these flaws, and you're really gonna feel it when you try to pose it for display. And for something so tall and lanky, you'd think it can do all kinds of cool poses, think the newer HGUC or the Zeta kits can, but really it just simply can't keep up with those. And I don't really understand why that is, because the Mk-III isn't some outlandish or unorthodox design, so really as a modern kit, it hasn't lived up to modern standards, and what a shame. And for size comparisons, here we have the lower end benchmark, the entry grade RX-78. And then we have the upper end benchmark, the high grade New Gundam. Now the lanky Mk-III stands comfortably in the middle of the two, and that puts it in line with the other Zeta family mobile suits, which are actually quite tall. But you can also see here just how much bulkier the New Gundam is compared to the really skinny Mk-III. With all that said, here's a Hobby Clubhouse 3-point verdict on the Bandai high-grade Universal Sentry 1144 Gundam Mk-III. Number 1. It's a kit for MSV fans. The Mk-III has no animation or really any story attached to it. At best, you'll have seen it in G Generation, but really this kit isn't going to introduce any new fans to some previously unknown expansive side universe. This is a singular MSV design, and that's mostly all it is. Now, for MSV fans like you and me, that's more than enough. I mean, God knows that there are those of us who got really excited when the RE100 line finally showed the Mk-III some love, but if you don't happen to fit happily into those categories, then the Mk-III may be a strange and lonesome thing that stands all on its own without any friends. And number 2, it gives you a rich selection of weapons. The two kinds of beam sabers and the two kinds of rifles give you a lot of options for loadouts, as we've established earlier. Now, it may not seem like much, but when you mess around with the kit, they really do make the kit much more complete and much more fun, because from the first point above, we know the Mk-III doesn't come pre-built with any stories or much background, so you can make your own. At the same time, the weapons here are pretty well grounded, which is good for fans who are a bit tired of all those over-the-top super weapons and big guns that have to go into every single high-end experimental mobile suit. And number 3, of course, the articulation falls short. And you probably guessed that this would be the final point here, and it's really curious why the Mk-III is the only kit to have such limited articulation among the modern kits. The HGUC Revive and the GEP Zeta, the Zeta Plus, well, maybe the Zeta Plus isn't such a good example, you'll know if you own it. But my point is, this sort of body shape lends itself very well to good articulation, and in fact they rely on such good articulation to show off the changing shapes of all the limbs and poses. Now don't get me wrong, you're not going to throw the Mk-III out the window or hate it, but the articulation will stick out and it's going to bother you and it's going to spoil a bit of the fun. So that's a review of the Gundam Mk-III. It isn't perfect, but it might open the door for a full Armor Mk-III release. Oh please Bandai, do it, get it on it right now. I'll do whatever you want, just give it. Thank you so much for watching. Come look us up on social media with updates on upcoming videos and sneak peeks at future projects, links are in the description below. Or hang out here some more with one of these other videos. But before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos from Hobby Clubhouse, and I'll see you next time.